Everyone's got their favorite books, everyone's got their 5-star reads, but I can officially say that these 10 books have really rewired how I think about time, health, relationships, and the kind of person that I want to be in my 20s. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another video. My name's Chris and I know how to read. And today we are going to be talking about the 10 books that I feel like have had the biggest impact on my life as I turned 28 years old, but in kind of my 20s as a whole. While I was a reader when I was much younger, I don't feel like I really picked up reading until I started making these YouTube videos a little over a year ago. I wish I read these books earlier on in my life. Some of these books have entire videos on my channel. Some of these books have just gotten like little vague mentions here and there. So I wanted to have one video kind of just to condense everything. And also, whether you're a new viewer or a returning viewer, you have an idea as to who I am and what books have helped shape me as a person. The first book that we are going to be talking about is Peter Attia's Outlive. This is a book where Peter Attia, MD, discusses how we can make minor improvements in our life, very specific improvements in our life, that can help increase the amount of healthy years that we have on this earth. I think one of the things that Outlived helped me do and helped me realize is the difference between long-term goals and short-term goals, and also kind of short-term, suffering isn't the right word for it, but kind of short-term sacrifices for long-term benefits. He talks about how important exercise is, and of course everyone knows how important and how awesome it is both mentally and physically to exercise, but he also explains in detail how exercise is the #1 tool when it comes to predicting long-term overall health. So whether you're in your 20s like me or in your 80s, like, exercise is incredibly helpful to making sure that you live a healthy life. And I think the main thing that he talks about in the book that has stuck with me whenever I'm making like eating decisions or exercise decisions is the difference between lifespan and health span. Lifespan, of course, how long you're going to live, but health span is also important to understand. It is the amount of life that you are actually healthy, mobile, functional human being. Health studies and statistics show that the last few years of your life aren't gonna be that great. You're probably gonna be less functional, you're probably gonna be less healthy, less mobile, a bunch of things. So what Attia talks about in the book is making sure that that period of like generative decline or like health decline in your later years is shortened as much as possible so you can live a healthy, mobile, solo functioning life without being like in bed due to some like neurodegenerative disease or something like that. And also really made me think about fitness, physical health, mental health, and even rest as like identity defining things. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm trying to be a runner, I'm trying to exercise, I'm trying to eat healthy. But once you kind of have that mindset of attaching yourself to being someone that eats healthy, you're not trying to eat healthy, you are someone that eats healthy, you are someone that exercises. It can be a really powerful mindset shift, and I don't think I would have come to that realization if I didn't read Attia's book. I made a whole video about this next book last week, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman is one of my favorite books of the year and probably the most philosophical self-help book I've ever read. If you want a deeper insight into that book, something should be popping up on screen right now, and there will be a link down below as well, so you can go watch that video. But to summarize, 4,000 Weeks is about 88 years, give or take, and it's about how long the longest average humans live, right? And depending on where you're looking at it from, 4,000 weeks can be a very long time or a very short amount of time. There are two things that I talked about in my previous video and that I'm going to mention here really quickly that really cemented in my mind kind of what I need to do in order to be successful at the things that I care about. First and foremost, accepting limitations. You're not going to be able to do everything you want to do. You are a human, I am a person, and as much as I have on my to-do list, I'm not going to be able to get to it all. Accepting the things that I can and cannot do and prioritizing the things that I truly care about and that I truly want to see change or at least more development in are going to see way more long-term goals than trying to focus on a bunch of things at once. And if you couldn't tell by the title, one of the main things that he focuses on throughout the entire book is how time is a finite resource. 4,000 weeks is like the absolute best case scenario. 88 years is the absolute best case scenario. But what we have to recognize with that in our minds is that we have to do everything we can to use time as well as we can on the things that we really care about and the things that we really want to do. Like, at the end of the day, we're all just mortals on this rock in space doing our best. And the best way we can do our best is by focusing on the things that we really, truly care about. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of this book is on the philosophy of time and how humans use it, how humans value it, how we take care of the things that we want to take care of, and how sometimes we push away the things that we want to take care of just to do more of something else. And with all that in mind, we're going to move towards another self-help book, which I think is the blueprint for a lot of self-help. And I think it's one of the best books you can read, whether you want to start doing something or you want to stop doing something. And that is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm not going to hype this book up too much. This book made a top 10 greatest books of all time for me. And while that list is certainly going through a lot of changes in my second year of like really intense reading, I still think it is like the #1 primo self-help, self-development book that everyone should read. The hype is real, like the hype is real. And the main point that James Clear drives home throughout this entire book, throughout every chapter of this book, is that small daily changes are what truly matter over big resolutions, right? Because these small daily changes are going to lead to atomic consequences. And while 4,000 Weeks didn't have a bunch of practical advice, this entire book, Atomic Habits, is all about practical advice. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about it. There is practical everyday advice that you can implement into your routine that is hopefully going to have atomic consequences in your future. And I think I read this book at the right time because I was reading it around the time that I started making these YouTube videos. So I've definitely adopted some of the stuff that James Clear talks about in this book. And I've been itching to read it again just to see if there's anything that I missed or anything that I could implement into my life now as I turn 28 years old. And I wanted to have 4,000 Weeks and Atomic Habits back to back because I feel like they're two sides of the same coin when it comes to self-help and when it comes to wanting to better yourself. While 4,000 Weeks talks about accepting your limitations, I think Atomic Habits really hones in on optimizing your life towards the things that you care about. So even though they're kind of attacking this whole idea, this whole notion of self-help, self-development, kind of habit building, if you want to call it that, I really do think reading both of these offers you like two different sides of a good discussion, if that makes sense. And it worked for me. Like I can honestly say as a self-help reader, I know a lot of that stuff can kind of be wishy-washy, but Oliver Burkeman's book and James Clear, they do great jobs of attacking two sides of a very complex discussion of habit building, of bettering yourself and all that. So I highly recommend both of those books. I promise we are going to move on to fiction. We are not going to do that right now. The next book we're going to be talking about is Mood Machine by Liz Pelly. This book goes into complete detail on Spotify's founding and how its complete takeover of music streaming and our kind of just free listening time has led to a complete change in the music scene and up-and-coming artists and very famous artists. Like Spotify has had such an impact on music that I think even people who use Spotify all the time don't understand. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to put it on this list is because this book really helped me kind of hone in on the idea that even small things like picking what music you listen to can have such a massive effect on your identity, on your daily life, on your mood. And I took a break from using Spotify just because I wanted to see how it would affect everyday life. And I'm kind of in a really rough spot with it now. And while I don't think Liz Pelly set out to kind of make a hit piece on why you should excommunicate Spotify from your daily life, I do think the main thing this book helped me realize is the importance of algorithms and how much companies are spending in order to just try and get a piece of our attention. I think one of the most damning quotes that I heard from this book was a quote that Liz Pelly got, I think from a Spotify executive. I could be wrong about that. But she says that Spotify's main competitor isn't other music streaming services. It's silence. So Spotify will do everything they can to avoid us humans being in silence. And even past music streaming, when I'm on social media, when I'm on YouTube, when I'm just paying attention to the advertising and the marketing that I'm being exposed to, Mood Machine really helped me realize the effect that that stuff can have on me, whether it's like a 5-second ad as I'm loading up a YouTube video, or whether it's like a trailer for a movie. Like Mood Machine really helped me realize, like, why is this company trying to get my attention specifically? We're gonna do a hard shift, but I need you to follow me, okay? We are going to be talking about I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. A very great memoir from a very great author. This book talks about Jeanette McCurdy's upbringing, her life as a child star, and how she was able to break away from the toxic relationships in her life, both in the acting world, in the acting business, as well as her very toxic relationship with her mother. There are certain sections of this book where you really empathize with Jeanette and you are absolutely heartbroken at the situation that she's going through. But then there are also other sections of this book where you see her growth and you see her like break away from these chains of these previous relationships, and you just see her grow. And like, I've never felt prouder for a woman that I've never met before. Like, this book is so good, and it really makes you feel like what Jeanette was going through at these times. And I think even if you take away like the child star angle and you see this as like a case study of daughter and mother, this book is a very good example of breaking away from the expectations that other people have for you and living the life that you want to live for yourself. This book, Jeanette McCurdy's book, is all about your identity and who you are. I really do think that a lot of us from a very young age either know who we are or know what we want to be. And Jeanette McCurdy's book is all about her knowing from a young age what she wanted, having that taken away from her, and then her going on this journey as an adult, as a child, to get it back. I think both of these books in this section kind of go to show just how powerful external forces are in building our mindset and building our worldview, whether it's something like social, like family, or whether it's something gigantic like technology. And I think adulthood really just means like questioning these influences, or at least having that switch in your head of being like, okay, I'm feeling this type of way in response to this. Why is that? Do I like this? Do I want to change this? Just having that thought process, I think I probably would have discovered just from growing up, but it would have been a lot of trials and tribulations, and these books helped me realize that a whole lot sooner. Next up, we have 3 books that I've talked about a lot on this channel, so we might breeze through them pretty quickly. And then we have a 4th nonfiction book that I think I might make a whole video about maybe later on in the year. First and foremost, Stoner by John Williams, one of, if not my favorite classic of all time, definitely top 3 at worst. I think the best way to describe this book and what John Williams was trying to kind of discuss when he wrote this book is the value of an ordinary life. Not a boring life, an ordinary life. You follow this character, William Stoner, as he goes from like farm boy to student to professor to husband to father. I think the main thing this book helped me realize is kind of at least the very inklings, the very beginnings of trying to figure out what success meant for me. This book really helped me come to terms with the idea that an ordinary life can be a great life if you take care of yourself and you take care of the people around you. Also, kind of an underrated part of this book, at least it was a very important part for me in this book, is kind of the Stoner comes from a family of farmers, right? And he chooses to break away from that life, from the farm that was going to be his after his parents passed away. He chooses to break away from that life so he can be a student and eventually a professor because he loves English and he loves learning so much. And I think something about that like quiet resolve and that quiet purpose that Stoner shows throughout the entirety of this book, specifically when he's talking about his studies, is something that is very admirable, again, in a very ordinary life. But even in the times where his life was going awesome and the times when his life was going not so great, Stoner always had this like North Star of English, of teaching that he really loved. And it made me realize like that's what I need to find in my life. And as long as I have that North Star, as long as I have that goal, a lot of other stuff will kind of fall into place. Similar to what Berkman was talking about in 4,000 Weeks, like you have to really care about the things that you want to care about. And I think Stoner helped me realize that I don't have to go grand all the time. And yes, it's okay to have goals and want to do cool stuff and want to go to amazing places, but you also have to be okay with the statistical chance that you're probably going to be ordinary. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Next up, another top 3, if not favorite classic of all time, The Great Gatsby. Again, a whole video on it, something should be popping up, whatever. I used to think when I read this book for the first time that this was a romance book. This is Keeping Up with the Kardashians in the 20s. And a part of me still wants to believe that, but I think this book is so much more about the idea of chasing fantasy and chasing illusions versus kind of just facing reality. I would love to feel the same type of way about a woman that Gatsby does about Daisy, right? I think that would be awesome. But in reality, their relationship was not healthy at all. And Gatsby was the last person to realize that, even though we as the reader could realize that 25% of the way through the book. As young kids, and I feel like this might be an unpopular opinion, and if y'all have any opinions on what I've said so far, leave a comment down below. But I think as young kids, we're kind of fed this idea that you can do whatever your dream is. You can do whatever you put your mind to. And obviously, I don't think there's anything wrong with chasing a dream, don't get me wrong. But I also think that chasing a dream can be dangerous when you make that switch to becoming disconnected from reality. And whether it is a dream girl or a dream job or a dream hobby or something like that, there's nothing wrong with chasing that, but you also have to come to terms with reality and recognize that, like in Stoner, there's nothing wrong with living an ordinary life where you don't get everything you want 100% of the time. I think as you get older, or as I get older, I think one of the main things that we have to start making really tough decisions on are our dreams, right? When we're younger, we fall in love with this idea of a dream, this idea of a job, this idea of a person. And as we get older, we have to start letting go of some of those ideas and start making concrete decisions. And I think what Great Gatsby has helped me realize over the multiple times that I have read this book is that you have to not let yourself get caught up in the idea of a person, the idea of a job, the idea of a place, a person, a thing, the idea of nouns, you know? You have to start making some concrete decisions. In Gatsby's case, you have to know when to call it quits on your dream girl and focus on something else. Next up, we have The Shining on Stephen King, one of my favorite books of the year, my first introduction to Stephen King, and wow, the hype is real, you know? Of course, everything that happens in this book comes from this like supernatural, horrific mindset from Stephen King's universe and all that. But I also think it is like a very good example on how this idea of ambition, this idea that we can always be greater than what we think we are, if we just try a little bit harder, if we keep following this rabbit hole, we go down and down and down. And that's what happens with our main character in this book, right? And like I said previously, there's nothing wrong with chasing a dream or a goal or anything like that. But we see our main character get abused mentally and physically by his father, and then he becomes a mental and physical abuser of his son. So I think in a very small way, while I love the horror aspects of this book, so I love 5-star book, just 5-star book, I'll say that off rip. I think in a very small way, this book helped me realize kind of these cycles that our parents either consciously or subconsciously put us in, and how we have to make decisions as we get older as adults on how we want to either continue or break those cycles. I forgot our main character's name in this book, so I just grabbed it off my shelf. Jack Torrance. Everything that Torrance shows his son, those are the types of cycles we can break, right? But when it comes to like the good stuff that our family shows us and the good stuff that people that are older than us in our lives kind of show us and instill in us, those are the cycles that we can continue. And The Shining kind of helped me realize, or at least helped me take note of the ones that I want to continue and the ones that I want to stop. I don't know what I'm going to title this section of the video, but I do think that this final book of this section will do a good job of kind of summarizing all of the stuff that we've talked about in each of the previous books, because we are going to be talking about Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This book is a very raw and grim telling of this man's survival during the Holocaust in Germany and how he was able to survive all of the trials and tribulations that he was put through during his imprisonment. And this book is split up into 2 sections, and I think they were originally 2 different books before they brought them and started shipping them together. But the first part of this book is his telling as a Holocaust survivor from the moment he was captured and imprisoned to his eventual escape. The second half, or at least the second part of this book, introduces the reader to what Frankl calls logotherapy, which is kind of the philosophy, the mindset that he credits with helping him get through his imprisonment. And I'm going to be summarizing like a whole philosophy into like a sentence or something like that. But I do think that Frankl's main point throughout this second section of the book is this idea that purpose is what gets you through suffering. This book really made me reflect on my resilience and how I choose to be resilient, if I choose to be resilient in a lot of different aspects of my life. And it also showed me how having a purpose, having some sort of meaning when we are going through hardship, I think is one of the most important things that humans can do. Because obviously our lives aren't going to be picture perfect every second. So really finding some sort of, not even positive meaning, just finding some sort of meaning when we are going through tough times, I think can do wonders for our resilience and kind of our mental health during these bad episodes. I think as I get older, I start thinking about like all of my failures, if I'm being honest, and all of my losses and all the stuff that I feel like I could have done better. And when I think about all that stuff, this book and the messaging of it really kind of helps me reframe these ideas in my mind. Instead of just being kind of like these negative times in my life, I can choose at least the meaning that I get from this terrible point in my life, and I could take away the power that this negative experience or these negative experiences had and choose my own meaning for what I want this time in my life to be. And kind of in a very similar way, but to end this book on a fiction note, we are going to move on to Circe by Madeline Miller. I'm just going to flat out look at my notes for this because I read this book so long ago. Circe is the daughter of Helios, the Titan god, who turns to humans and mortals for companionship. It's all coming back to me now. Helios doesn't like this, so he like excommunicates his daughter from the family, from this like place of Titan godlyhood that they live in. During this excommunication, Cersei finds out that she has a talent for witchcraft. So as a character, she literally and metaphorically can create the life that she wants with her power. I didn't even mean to do this, but I also think that Cersei's a great book to kind of summarize some of the other stuff that we've talked about in previous sections of Cersei's life and Cersei's story, at least in Madeline Miller's retelling, is about breaking away from the systems that have been placed before you, breaking away from your family, growing up and starting to do things more so on your own. Obviously have a support system, have friends and family that love and care about you, but also being able to make decisions and being able to live a life that is led primarily by the decisions that you yourself make. You do that in your 20s all the time, right? And I think Cersei's story is such a powerful case of being able to create the life that you want, even if it means struggle, even if it means loneliness, even if it means being put into a situation that you did not want to be put in. And I think the message that Madeline Miller is able to portray in this book of creating the life that you want to live, to care for the things that you want to care about, to find beauty and meaning in the struggle and the loneliness, I think is incredibly important, especially as I get older, especially as we all get older. And I think that's going to be it for this week's video. I love all 10 of these books, and reading through this list and making the notes for this video makes me want to reread all of these books again. With that in mind, this is currently the stack of books that I have to read. The shortest book in this stack is a little over 700 pages. So I don't know when I'm going to be able to read any of the books on this list, but all of them have been super duper important to me, and I really do hope that you can get some sort of like inkling to want to read these books. Everyone's going to tell you that your 20s are the most important time in your life, and I think there's certainly some truth to that. But I think the most important thing that I have learned about my 20s, and I hope that y'all can do, whether you're in your 20s, you're past your 20s, whatever, I hope the thing you get from this video, you get from any video that talks about how important your 20s are, is the best thing you can do for yourself right now is prepare yourself for a better future, whether that's breaking away from toxic relationships, building better habits, any of the stuff that we've talked about in this video. The best thing you can do right now is better your life a little bit so you can have an even better life in the future. I think that's like something that all of these books in some way, shape, or form have kind of taught me. With all of that in mind, I want to hear down in the comments down below, are there any books, any stories that you guys think help shape your life, whether you're in your 20s, whether you're in high school, whether you're in like your 60s or whatever, from whatever age group you're in. I want to hear what stories, what books have changed who you are as a person for the better. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, all that good business. I'll take one of those. I prefer all three of those, but I'll take any one of those that your heart desires. Do something that makes you happy. Do something that makes you some money. I'm gonna get some sleep, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace. Yeah.